Kevin O'Connor writes for The Ringer. He joins us now. Kev, let's just start with this angle to that comment, and that is resignation in Kyrie Irving's voice, the tone there. Does that mean he's about to shut it down? The Nets are about to shut it down?
I think he was just choosing the opposite approach that we saw from him in game one when he's throwing double birds. So I'm not reading too much into what Kyrie said. Him and KD are going to come back, and ultimately they still have self-belief that they can come back in this series.
You think they can come back in the series? Who did you have at the beginning of the series, and has anything that you've seen changed your prediction?
I picked Boston before the series, and I would stick with them. Ultimately, with Brooklyn here down 2-0, I think you guys are right here. You said it in the first segment about how 5-6 game series at this point. KD is going to have a big game. It's inevitable. Kevin Durant, 4 for 17 and 9 for 24. He's going to have a big night, and that's where Brooklyn gets their win. But what we've seen from the Celtics on the defensive end of the floor, Marcus Smart, of course, wins Defensive Player of the Year, but that's really like a team. It's the defense of the year, because Tatum, what he has done against Kevin Durant while also carrying that load on offense is just elevated him to an even higher level, because everything has been tough for KD, never mind everybody else on Boston's roster that continues to make things tough for all of the Brooklyn Nets.
Okay, I think you have to read into Kyrie Irving, because he's just exactly that kind of guy. You know, Mike made a good point last night. Usually when a player calls out positively, praises the opposing coach or the opposing general manager, he's really taking a shot at his own coach and general manager, especially when he says Ime Udoka and the Celtics run offensive and defensive sets, which the Brooklyn Nets absolutely do not do.
Right.
Maybe there's some lingering bitterness over the Harden thing, or Ben Simmons coming back and not being able to contribute, so maybe he's taking a shot at his own GM. But beyond that, just the tone of Kyrie Irving. What happened there, Kevin? Do you think that when the league fined him, probably gave him a talking to, that took away his edge? You know, just the fact that he wasn't mother bleeping the crowd, wasn't flipping out the crowd, sort of, I don't know, took away that edge that allows him to go to the next level.
Nah, Kyrie's always hot and cold. That's who he was in Boston. That's who he was in Cleveland. That's who he's always going to be. He's hot one day, cold the next day. And I think that's typical for Kyrie. It's what people in the locker room deal with him, for better or for worse. And with Kyrie Irving, like despite the fact that he's acting this way, it doesn't mean that he'll enter game 3 with that approach going back to Brooklyn here. So for Kyrie, I don't even look at it as much as the off-court stuff, but you're right, it could have been a veiled shot at the front office for them making the decision that they did, because we really don't know if Ben Simmons is going to be back. And even if he does, you can't really expect much from Ben Simmons after 1 year off, when the last time we saw him was the greatest embarrassment of his career. You can't have those expectations. And I'm sure Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant know that more than anybody in the Brooklyn Nets organization.
We'll have more on Ben Simmons here coming up, but first let's take a look at the Ford Big Board, built for America, built Ford proud. Kevin Durant, through 2 games in this series, has been just dreadful. He's shooting just 32% from the field, 29% from behind the line. He's also averaging just 4 rebounds and 4 assists while turning the ball over 6 times in each of the first 2 games of the series. Here's Durant last night on how the Celtics are locking him down.
They playing 2 or 3 guys on me sometimes when I'm off the ball. They, mucking up actions when I run off stuff. I see Horford leaving his man to come over to hit me sometimes. They just playing 2 or 3 guys hit me wherever I go, and that's just the nature of the beast in the playoffs.
Well, but, I feel what the Celtics are doing is different, Kevin, better. I mean, the Bucks beat Durant last year, but Durant still got his. The Bucks weren't doing this to him last year. This is a Celtics thing. What do you think they uncovered there? What do you think they knew about him going into this series?
Well, I mean, I'm not sure it's as much as knowing something about him. Like, you still watch all of KD's misses, and he's still getting to his quote-unquote spots. But he does definitely have a lot of attention being drawn to him. It's not just Tatum here. Like we saw at the end of game 2 with Al Horford coming to help over, whether it's Grant Williams off of a switch, Marcus Smart and help. There's always somebody inside the paint, and that's really a detriment to Bruce Brown. Like, as great as he's been in this series, the fact Bruce Brown isn't a knockdown shooter, the Celtics are helping off of him every single opportunity they can. And that's where Ben Simmons, when he returns, if he returns, that's not going to solve their problems either. Because if there's a guy to help off of Brown or Simmons, Boston is doing it and showing 2 or 3 sometimes at KD.
All right, Kevin, I understand this is a dangerous game to play. And the game goes something like this. Well, if the Celtics can do this against Kevin Durant, who some people think is the best player in the NBA, Ooh, that means they can do it against anybody. And here we are, smooth sailing all the way to the NBA Finals. Do you think the Celtics, I know they've got a strong defensive approach, do you think they can do this against any other team in the Eastern Conference?
I do, but I think one of the reasons why Brooklyn maybe isn't as much of a challenge as we expected is because their lack of defense. A team like the Miami Heat with Bam Adebayo, they have so many different lineups they can play that can be effective on the defensive end. So many guys they can stick to Tatum, stick on Brown. Whereas Brooklyn, that's why they need Simmons back, because it creates a domino effect in a positive way for them with matchups. The Miami Heat have that. The Bucks, if they get Chris Middleton back, are able to do that too. So there's definitely tougher defensive matchups for Boston, particularly for Tatum. But right now, I do think Boston can compete against any team and could go all the way to the NBA Finals and win it.
All right, Kevin, I do want to break down further. You know, you stop Durant, does that mean you can stop Giannis? You stop Durant, does that mean you can stop Embiid? Those are different kind of guys. We'll break that down further. All right, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown have been money so far this series with the Nets. Tatum is averaging 25 per game and shooting 42% from three, while also averaging 9 assists, and more importantly, been a big factor in shutting down Kevin Durant. Meanwhile, Jaylen Brown is at 22.5 points per game and shooting 49% from the field. Back here with Kevin O'Connor of The Ringer and Michael Holley. So assess what you're seeing from these two guys, Kevin.
We're seeing all the talk earlier this season ended up being wrong with their own development individually as two young guys. Like, I think that some of those questions back in December were fair to ask in the big picture of Boston, but the way Tatum has improved as a playmaker, the fact he was able to have, you know, he shoots 5 for 16 in game 2, but 10 assists to only 3 turnovers with multiple great passes creating for his teammates, drawing help. Like, these guys have both come such a long way since even just December.
All right, so you already referenced that. All right, December. So tell me why. Like, what's the biggest difference between December and now for Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum specifically?
I mean, I think it really was summed up in that game 1. Ime Udoka called it a microcosm of the season with the Marcus Smart pump fake drive and then the pass to Tatum for the spin finish to win the game at the buzzer. Like, that play really did symbolize all of these guys on the roster making the extra pass, doing the things that are required regardless of their status on the team. Like, whether you're the all-star like Tatum or Brown, whether you're the former all-star like Horford or a young player like Grant Williams, the Celtics have a real buy-in 1 through 8 on the guys in this rotation. And that's really one of the big reasons why Boston is having so much success this year. Think of all the great Boston sports teams the last 20, 25 years. They have buy-in, people who star in their roles, and that's what the Celtics team has no matter how far they go.
I haven't checked the stats lately, but at one point in the season, Jason Tatum was #1 in the NBA in defensive WAR. And I've still been asking people what that means. Nobody can really give me a good answer. Maybe you can give me a good answer. You don't have to necessarily break down defensive WAR, but you tell me, do you think Jason Tatum, not just is a top 10 player, is he a top 10 defensive player?
I wouldn't say he's a top 10 defensive player. Maybe if like his role was to be that and he didn't have as many shots, sure. But like some of these defensive stats, whether it's WAR, BPM, RPM, the defense is so hard to measure in the NBA. It's not like the offensive end where you can measure points and rebounds. You can't really measure defense. It takes 5 to defend, and you can have all the best metrics, but it doesn't necessarily indicate your ability as a defender. It can indicate the unit that you're part of, and Tatum is part of a great Celtics defensive unit.
Okay, we talk about that turnaround. How much did Ime Udoka have to do with that, Kevin?
Quite a lot. I mean, he's the guy who, you know, I remember back in December in my pod, like I talked about how surprising it was that this rookie head coach is publicly calling out his players and their deficiencies. But that public accountability, in addition to whatever's happening in the film room, in the locker room with all of these players, so much of the credit has to go to him for holding his players accountable and really more than anything else, holding them to an even higher standard, because Tatum, Brown, these guys have had so much success, and yet there's more that they were able to get out of them.
All right, here's the latest on Ben Simmons. I said we're going to circle back to it, so here we go. Reports are that he is targeting Game 4 for a return to the court. By that point, the Nets could be playing for their playoff lives. Simmons has yet to play in a game this season. This is my take on it, Kevin. I find it so pathetic that he's coming back in Game 4. He's had 300 days off. I don't know what that number is, but he hasn't played
more than 300.
Last June, right? So he's had all year to come back. He's been cleared to play for a week. The series is on the line in Game 3. If the Nets lose Game 3, what does it matter if he's back in game 4, it's too late.
Yeah.
It's over.
Yeah.
So if you're going to come back and you're going to have some sort of miracle return to this series and make a factor and make a difference, it has to be in game 3. Game 4, to me, that is so typical Ben Simmons and so typical of this Nets team. By that point, pal, the series could be already over. So I think even the decision to come back, Saturday or Monday, what's really the difference, Ben? And so that, to me, tells me all I need to know about Ben Simmons. But what do you think about that situation?
Felger, here's what I think about that. Like, is game 4 his out? If they fall down 3-0, and then game 4, they say, you know what, we're not going to bring him back. Maybe Ben Simmons and Clutch don't even want him there. Just a conspiracy there. But like the fact he hasn't played yet, like you said, what difference does it make with those couple of days? It's just, everything's so strange. Even the fact it's reported as being back game 4, but Steve Nash goes out there publicly and says, that's news to me. Everything's been weird about this whole saga going back to the James Harden trade when they were denying all of that the days before. I don't know what to make about this with Ben Simmons. All I know is Ime Udoka and that Celtics staff are going to do hack a Simmons as soon as he's out there.
All right, so I like the conspiracy. You know, it's his out. That makes a lot of sense. But here's another question I have: Are the Nets on board with Ben Simmons? I know they wanted James Harden out of there, and it seems like the players like him a little bit. He's always joking around on the bench. He hasn't been in uniform yet. But do you think the organization sees Ben Simmons as part of its long-term plans? He's under contract for what, another 2 or 3 years?
Yeah.
Do you think they want him there?
I think they want him there. It's just a matter of, does he want to be there? Or is there a more advantageous move for them out there? Because think about it, like this guy's missed a year with a number of different injuries. There's the mental concerns about his ability to, on the court, dealing with adversity. So with Simmons for Brooklyn here, they have Kevin Durant and Kyrie Irving. They have to make sure this third piece is right. You can't rule out them moving Simmons this offseason. I think on paper, they want him there. They view him as becoming a guy like a supersized version of what we've seen Bruce Brown do with screening and rolling to the basket and playmaking and finishing some of those plays where, not a lot of organization happening off an offensive board and being their number one defender. So they want him there on paper. To me, like when I think about Ben Simmons, it's does he want to be there? And we won't know the answers to that really until this summer.
All right, let's get to some of the other issues across the Eastern Conference. The Bucks, this is the lead story, I think, are dealing with a key injury. Chris Middleton, their second best player, has been ruled out for the rest of the Bucks' opening round series with Chicago due to a sprained MCL. According to ESPN, Middleton will be reevaluated in 2 weeks. That doesn't mean he's coming back in 2 weeks, meaning he'll be reevaluated. There was a local report out of Milwaukee that it'll be 3 to 4 weeks, which means definitely this round and probably all of the next. And so I ask you, Kevin O'Connor, first of all, is that a death knell for the Bucks? Is there even a guarantee that the Celtics face the Bucks in the next round? Could they be in danger against the Bulls?
I'd say no guarantee the Celtics face the Bucks next round. Chicago has an opportunity here. I think nationally, Celtics fans know what Chris Middleton can do in the playoffs. Suns fans know. They saw him score 40 in game 4 last year. But I still think nationally, people don't realize how good Chris Middleton can be, especially in big games with his ability to create. The Bucks not having him, that's going to create issues for them against Chicago with their perimeter defense, Patrick Williams, Alex Caruso out there, and never mind if they were to advance to the next round and face the Celtics. It is trouble for the Bucks, and he really needs to come back and be healthy. Otherwise, I don't know how much Giannis and Drew Holiday can really handle on top of everything Middleton was already doing for that team on both ends of the court.
Yeah, I love Middleton, too. I don't think I love Middleton so much where you take him out, and I think the Bulls can win. I still don't think the Bulls are going to beat the Bucks in this series. And maybe they'll make it
if
more
DeMar drops 40, maybe.
Yeah, okay. I don't know. But tell me this. With the Bucks, compromise for now. If you had to rank the best teams in the East right now, who do you go? Is it still Milwaukee 1? Is it Miami? Is it Boston? Who do you got?
Without Middleton, I'd probably go Celtics 1, Heat 2, Bucks 3. But really, I want to put Philly there with Embiid if Harden is able to continue improving his game on the offensive end. But right now, it's looking like Embiid, Maxey, and then Harden being your third scorer for Philly. So I'd say that's probably the top 4 right now.
All right, let's circle back to that question about, the Celtics shut down Kevin Durant, and they're poking holes in his game, and they're all over Durant, not letting him get off. If they can do that to Kevin Durant, can they do that to Giannis? Can they do that to Joel Embiid? Or are those guys just too different and it's a different sort of matchup?
It's a different matchup, but they can do it. I think Boston has proven they are able to exploit weaknesses. You know, we talked about it earlier with helping off of Bruce Brown. They would help off of Ben Simmons if he's able to return, and creating a more difficult driving lane for Kevin Durant with 2 or 3 guys showing help in the paint. You'd see a similar thing against Joel Embiid with some occasional help, some occasional one-on-one play, helping off their weaker shooters like a Matisse Thybulle. You'd see the same thing against the Bucks. So I think for Boston, they just have the ability to play so many different styles and match up in so many different ways with their aggressive switching defense. So yes, the Celtics can match up against Giannis or Embiid, but it would be a different type of challenge than what we've seen against Kevin Durant.
Giannis, I can see. Embiid, ooh, he's a beast. I'm just trying to imagine who would match up with him, because he really eats up Al Horford, Robert Williams, not bulky enough to deal with him. How would they deal with a guy like that? I don't see it.
No, I think it's going to be help. You're going to have Horford or Robert Williams in a primary defensive role there, but it's not just on them. You're not going to stop Joel Embiid one-on-one. He's going to eat you apart and live at the free throw line. It would have to be a situation where you're helping off of the weakest shooter on that Sixers roster, likely Matisse Thybulle in a lot of their lineup configurations that Doc Rivers uses. So it would really, again, be down a one-on-one thing for Boston, just like it isn't against Brooklyn. It's a collective 5-man operation to slow down a Joel Embiid, which is why it's so important for Philadelphia that James Harden improves as a scorer. Thus far, he has not proven that he can score anywhere inside the paint the way he has before in the past. So I think for Boston, unless Harden can prove that in a potential series down the line, it's all about making life really hard on Joel Embiid.